Welcome to MAT 2LB, booklet number 9, fractions part 2, lesson number 2, multiplying fractions, one fraction, and one whole number. So in our last lesson, we started considering what it's like to multiply two fractions, and we came up with a process. Now we're going to extend that process to include not just a proper fraction multiplied by a proper fraction, but a proper fraction being multiplied by a whole number. So let's jump right into example number 1. Example number 1 says, multiply the following fraction by a whole number, 1/3 times 2. Now, this whole lesson hinges on recognizing that 2, the whole number 2, can actually be written in a fairly straightforward fashion as a fraction. And we do that in this way. We take our whole number and we write it as a number over 1. This is another way of writing a whole number, this time so it looks like a fraction. Now from here, we just do exactly what we did in the last lesson, which is multiply the numerator by the numerator and multiply the denominator by the denominator. So let's go ahead and do that now. We have 1 times 2, those are our numerators, giving us 2. And we have as our denominators 3 times 1, that's going to give us 3. And we are going to write that down, because at this point, we would be looking to reduce this fraction, if possible, into the lowest equivalent fraction form. So we can go over and check our factor chart, looking at 2, looking at 3, and we'll see that the only factor they have in common is 1, which we can do it in this particular case. If we were to divide our numerator and denominator both by 1, we would get the exact same fraction back. So most times we don't bother to go through the act of actually dividing by 1, since the fraction turns out exactly the same. So we have an answer of 2/3 for example number 1. Let's try example number 2 together, and then you guys can try a couple on your own. So let's multiply the following fraction by a whole number. Here we have 5 times 3/10. So for us, again, we're recognizing there's a whole number thrown in the mix here. We want to turn that into a fraction as quickly as possible. So we are going to do that by writing 5 as 5 over 1. Now there might be enough space here if we wanted to. We could actually rewrite that whole thing if you find this a little bit crowded. We can write 5 over 1 times 3 over 10 equals. At this point now, we have two fractions. We multiply the numerator by the numerator, which will give us 15. And we multiply the denominator by the denominator, which is 1 times 10, and that will give us 10. So there is our result so far. We have 15 over 10. At this point, we want to go check our factor chart and see if there's a factor that's common to both our numerator and our denominator that we can divide the numerator and denominator by. So let's go check. We have 15 and we have 10. So they have 1 in common and they have 3 in common, or sorry, rather they have 1 in common and they have 5 in common. So let's head back. We are going to divide our numerator and our denominator both by 5, and our answer then becomes 15 divided by 5 gives us 3, and 10 divided by 5 gives us 2. So our answer is 3 over 2, or 3/2. So that is our answer. What I'd like you to do at this point is to try example A on your own. So over here we have 2/5 times 3. Give this one a try. When you've got an answer, come on back and we'll check in and see how you did. Okay, you're back. Let's have a look. So we have a fraction being multiplied by a whole number. First thing we're going to do, as with the other two examples, is to write that whole number as a fraction, which is that same whole number over 1. And let's do a rewrite because we've got the space here. 2 over 5 times 3 over 1 equals. Now, as we did in all the other examples and in the last lesson, we multiply numerator by numerator, which gives us 6. And we multiply denominator by denominator, which gives us 5. And now we write that out and we go and check to see if there are factors that are common to both 6 and 5, and you will find there are not. So 6 over 5, or 6/5, would be our final answer for example A. What I'd like you to do now is hit pause in the video and go off and try example B on your own. And when you've got an answer, come on back and we'll see how you did. Alright, you're back. Let's get a look at this one. Again, we've got a whole number here being multiplied by a fraction. First thing we want to do is write 8 as a fraction, which we would do by writing 8 over 1. So I'm going to write that out. 8 over 1 times 1 over 4. At this point, I want to multiply numerator times numerator, which gives me 8. And I want to multiply denominator by denominator, which gives me 4. I'm going to take 8 over 4, which is my answer so far, and see via my factor chart if there is a factor that is common to both 8 and 4 that I can divide the numerator and denominator by. And when I check that out, I'll see that 4 is common to both my numerator and denominator. So when I complete that arithmetic, I end up with 2 over 1, or I can actually just write that as 2 as a whole number. Either one of those two answers will be fine for me. Usually if you have a number over 1, we don't typically bother to write the denominator at that point, but like I said, either one is fine. So that is the answer for example B, 2 over 1 or 2. And this is the end of lesson number 2. If you're feeling good about it, head off to the worksheet, and we'll see you in lesson number 3.